Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. Joining me in the studio this evening, Chris McCusker from the Socialist Wing of the SNP, and also joining me this evening is Andrew Wilson. So welcome to both my guests. Hi, guys.
Good evening.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Gordon.
Hi, Andrew. All right, so I've got to get straight into the coronavirus update before we actually start dealing with the day's news. Now, as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 323,452 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government's regional test centres. And of these, 305,000 were confirmed negative. 18,452 were positive. There are now 7 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. There have been 0 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive today. This will be an underestimate of the number of cases, and not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. Of the people who have tested positive, 299 were in hospital last night, 3 of whom were in intensive care, plus 7 more people in intensive care with suspected COVID-19. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by coronavirus COVID-19 infection remains at 2,491. This number only includes those who have died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK daily figures available show that 45,312 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 11. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. And now to the main points of tonight's news. And first of all, the All Under One Banner Edinburgh demo.
All Under One Banner, the non-party campaign organisation for Scottish independence, held its first demonstration since the COVID-19 lockdown began, today outside the Scottish Parliament. Attendees had to apply to be part of the event, and physical distancing was carefully observed as the crowd listened to speeches from, amongst others, Chris McCusker and former SNP MP George Kerevan.
Bear in mind that every rule and every power that they take away from Scotland, as I say, will reduce the powers in there down to the powers no more than a regional council.
Some in the independence movement had criticised All Under One Banner for resuming their campaign while the coronavirus pandemic still poses a threat. But the organisers and speakers rejected this, saying that the independence campaign was too important and had no time to waste.
I think that's a political issue that everybody who's involved has the right to talk about. As long as you talk, as long as you demonstrate, as long as you're involved responsibly, you socially distance. There weren't a huge number of people here, but we were citizens making our point of view heard, and I think we're allowed to do that.
All Under One Banner will hold another physically distanced demonstration at Bannockburn next month, and will announce a march in either Edinburgh or Glasgow as soon as the Scottish Government moves the country into Phase 4 of lockdown restrictions being lifted.
Okay, well, I think the most obvious person to ask for a response to that first item tonight is, of course, Chris McCusker, who was the man giving the speech there outside the Holyrood Parliament. So, Chris, looked like a very wet day in there today. And obviously, there's not the sort of numbers you would expect simply because of the restrictions on what we're allowed to do.
No, there wasn't the numbers there, Gordon, but I was privileged to be the first independence activist to make their speech in front of the Scottish Parliament. I've got Andrew to thank for that, and of course Neil.
Yep.
And the numbers were vastly reduced. Obviously, respecting social distancing, I can tell the viewers that there were oodles of hand sanitizer, gloves and masks available on request, should anyone need it. There was also markings on the ground as well, indicating social distancing boundaries. So from a health and safety point of view, as a trade union rep, I was suitably impressed.
Yeah, well, it certainly looked as safe as you could possibly make it, Chris. Andrew, I mean, these kind of events obviously have got to continue to keep, well, basically to keep independence in the public eye, I suppose. How important is it at this stage, do you think, for such events to continue like this?
Gordon, I think it's very important. The movement hasn't really been very visible, and certainly has been not visible at all on the streets for the last 16 more weeks.
Yep.
I think it's important that one of the things that All Under One Banner marches do is that they show to everybody that the movement is strong and that people are involved. I personally think that the marches also encourage people in to join us because the marches are well organised, they're happy, they're inclusive, they're peaceful, they're great events.
Yeah.
So we were keen to have a smaller, static demonstration today in order to show again that that All Under One Banner events are all positive, inclusive, well organised, well run events. But it's also important. There are 165 days until the 1st of January 2021. It's pretty clear what Westminster is going to seek to do to our Parliament and to our rights.
Indeed.
And we can't wait for 165 days. We need to mobilise now. We must.
Okay. I've heard a great deal on social media about now being the time for the SNP government to start the process of campaigning. Have there been any signs at all from within the party that this is happening yet? I've heard some, what you might call mood music, in other words, rumours on the internet about things starting to happen, but nothing concrete yet.
Well, I can visibly see that individual branches are still, for want of a better word, in campaign mode.
Uh-huh.
You know, my own branch have been holding Zoom meetings, and you know, there are groups out there that are having their own webinars. You know, I can speak personally of the SNP trade union group, who they meet once a month through Zoom.
Yeah.
My comrades in the SNP Socialists, we meet weekly and fortnightly. So, you know, from that point of view, you know, everything is rolling along, adapting as best we can.
But at the moment, there's nothing sort of imminent, Chris, that we know about that we can put your finger on.
Well, no, I can't put anything on my finger, you know, directly. But I can say that if you are politically engaged, as obviously I am, then it's up to you to keep in touch with what is happening on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, if that unnecessarily involves you to engage with BBC Parliament channel in order to see what's going on in the House of Commons, then, you know, sometimes you have to dance with the devil in order to be informed. For instance, tonight, they're discussing the so-called trade bill for the internal market of the UK. Now, I'll be watching that back later on because I know that my comrade Chris Stevens is going to be speaking on that, and I'm keen to hear what he has to say. I think,
Chris, there'll be a lot of people watching that debate tonight, specifically because of the threat that it poses. Andrew, if I could ask you, it was mentioned in the earlier clip that we showed that there's planned to be another series of events for All Under One Banner, and the next one being at Bannockburn. What exactly do you think is the significance of the Bannockburn warning? Well, is it going to be a lot larger, do you think?
I think it is likely that it will be larger because the venue has much greater space that can be used. The reason for going to Bannockburn, or many reasons for going to Bannockburn, but it includes that we were In a normal year, our plans would have been to have organised and hosted a very large march and rally at Bannockburn, and obviously that's not possible this year. Bannockburn was uppermost in our minds in terms of one of these demos that we're now organising. So we hope that the size of the site will give us more flexibility. We are certainly thinking very hard about the messages that we will be sending at that demo. As you've picked up, All Under One Banner was very clear about the messages from today, which was to point out the significant threats that the UK Internal Market Bill, White Paper and Bill in due course presents to us as Scottish citizens and to the institutions that we rely on in Scotland. And secondly, a message that the best way to protect those institutions and protect those political rights is independence now. The message we will have more clear messaging for the demo in Bannockburn, which we'll unveil in due course. But Bannockburn is such an important site, and obviously in cultural terms, it's had some commentary during lockdown with the travails and challenges that the National Trust for Scotland has been encountering. And so that site, I think, it's an iconic site already, and I think we are going to do whatever we can to make it even more so, if that's possible.
Okay, well listen, thank you for that, Andrew. I'm going to move on to our next story this evening, and it is in North Lanarkshire COVID-19 outbreak at an NHS call centre. The health officials are investigating a cluster of COVID-19 cases at a call centre in Scotland that carries out contact tracing for the NHS in England. The US firm Sighthill confirmed on Sunday that its call centre in Motherwell had suffered a local outbreak of infections. We take the safety and well-being of our staff very seriously, a Sighthill spokesperson said. The company added that it had been requested that everyone who has been working at the site books and completes a test within the next 24 hours. Dr. David Cromie, a consultant in public health medicine for NHS Lanarkshire, said that we became aware this morning, 19th of July, of a number of potentially linked cases of coronavirus in Lanarkshire. We instigated some immediate measures to reduce the risk and are currently investigating the situation. A worker at the Sighthill Centre reportedly told Monica Lennon, the Labour MSP for Central Scotland, that physical distancing had not been maintained by employees in shared spaces and during work breaks. I asked if they felt the working environment was safe. They answered no, Lennon tweeted.
All under one banner.
For further comment in relation to these claims. A spokesperson for the Scottish Government said that it was also monitoring the situation. Now, if I could take, first of all, Chris, your response to this. An American company, which is carrying out work for the English NHS, it seems, has had a coronavirus outbreak. This seems like a massive amount of irony, surely.
Well, ironic or not, we have to take it in context. Yeah. And the fact that only 6 people have been tested positive for coronavirus at the call centre. And I believe that the Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, announced this morning that the call centre has been closed.
Yeah, I've heard that too, yeah.
Here again, we see clear, concise action that has been taken by the Scottish Government in order to minimise the effects of this, I would say, small outbreak. And there no doubt has to be an investigation as to the levels of social distancing within that office space. Questions have to be raised as to why the tracing could not have been done from home. There is a wider call for people to continue to work from home where possible. And I would have thought that this would have been an excellent model for everyone to follow, with that in regard, being able to work from home, using the latest technology, computers. And also the fact the wide coverage that Scotland enjoys with 4G communication. That's contrarily against what the Tory government espouse. The fact that the Scottish government have invested heavily in broadband connectivity. So don't believe all you read in the right-wing media.
So, Chris, to sort of summarise your points there, you feel as a sort of trade unionist and probably as a health and safety trade unionist that this demonstrates clearly that working from home is actually a lot safer in this kind of call centre environment.
Well, definitely, yes, of course I do. And I also think that we should use this time wisely to see, the way that we work, can diversify, to adapt working from home.
Yeah.
Working from home allows you, some may think that this is controversial and it goes against the working time directive. But working from home allows you to be as flexible as you possibly can. So if there are people out there who have child-minding issues, who have caring issues, that they can flexibly work from home, as long as obviously that work has been completed in the time scale that has been set out by the company.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris. If I could turn to you, Andrew, for your comments. How do you feel about the idea of an American company working for the English government in Scotland having an outbreak of COVID-19, the very thing that they are actually trying to help prevent? It just seems incredible, does it not?
I suppose in the circumstances at the moment, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So it is. I mean, it's miserable and horrible for the staff affected, but it is a very curious story. We know that Scotland is very popular for locating call centres in because of the recognition and the response that Scottish accents attract internationally. And so call centres are big business here, so that there are internationally owned call centres based here doesn't come as a surprise, and that they are providing services around the world as well, as including to England, isn't a surprise either. But Chris's point is absolutely right. I'm aware myself from my own work and from a number of other organisations. They reacted and responded very quickly, and organisations that run call centres and delivery centres, they reacted very quickly. They dispersed all of their staff home, made sure that they had the technology at home to be able to work from home, and they have done so. And it's beginning to look like they are planning now to continue to do so indefinitely.
So do you think perhaps, then, Andrew, that the COVID-19 virus is going to have a positive effect on the working environment, unintended though that might be?
I would like to think so. Chris makes a good point about people being able to work flexibly. I think that when they're at home, and I'm aware of very large organisations who have always indicated that they were open to working flexibly, but now they are being very clear that that is the way in which they expect their workforce to operate from now on. I think there are benefits insofar as business travel is still extremely limited. You can see that it's returning a little bit, but nowhere near the levels that we saw up until the end of last year. And so there are some benefits for the environment in a reduction in air travel, notwithstanding the employment changes that also are triggered by that change. Yep. But yes, I think the ability for people to work for a far greater proportion of the workforce to work from home is a positive step. And if it is something that is positive out of the current crisis, then that's a small encouragement.
It's interesting what you were saying there, Andrew, about things perhaps changing on a more permanent basis with regards to air travel. I was reading today that a big international carrier had now stripped out a lot of its jets and was using them to deliver packages, was actually turning their jets into freight services because it allowed them to keep operating their airports and making some kind of profit at the same time. Do you think this is perhaps a new business model for the future? Fewer people travelling and more stuff travelling?
I think it's certainly very likely. As it happens, I live very close to an airport here, and so I pay a passing interest to the traffic that is in the skies close to the house. And certainly during lockdown over Scotland, apart from air ambulances, really, and the occasional military air traffic, the only thing that we were seeing moving was either mail flights or cargo flights.
Yeah.
And we know that Prestwick operates a reasonable sized cargo operation from there. We can see that the regional airports in Scotland are part of the mail distribution network. I see the flights heading for East Midlands every night. It's a way of me telling what time it is, and that's carrying the Royal Mail. So I think we are certainly seeing the air industry having to pivot to a degree, and of course with the amount of travel, with the amount of items that are being moved around, are being sold online now, the ability to move higher value items and to get them into delivery networks quickly is also something that's changed. So I'm not surprised that air operators and air carriers are changing the mixture of their operations at this time. It seems a sensible thing to do.
Well, I hope it continues, and I hope that the workers who Chris represents at Glasgow Airport can hang on to their jobs if things improve with the freight business. Anyway, I need to move on to our next story this evening, and that is England's chief nurse who has been dropped from the COVID-19 briefing after refusing to back Dominic Cummings. England's chief nurse has confirmed that she was dropped from Daily Downing Street coronavirus briefing after refusing to back Dominic Cummings. In a trial run for the 1st of June briefing, Ruth May said that she was asked about Boris Johnson's chief advisor, driving his family from London to Durham during the lockdown while his wife had suspected COVID-19. After she failed to back Cummings, she was told she was no longer needed for the televised press conference taking place later that day, although she was never given an explanation why. At the time, aides to the Prime Minister briefed journalists that May not have made it to the briefing because she might have been stuck in traffic. Appearing before MPs in the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee on Monday, May said that she had attended preparations for the briefing and was told she was no longer required without explanation. Asked by the committee chair, Meg Hillier, for her views on Cummings' behaviour and whether it was a breach of the rules, May said, "In my opinion, the rules were clear. They were there for everyone's safety and they applied to us all. I don't know why I was dropped from the briefing. You would have to ask other people," she added. Now, if I first of all come to you, Chris, on this one, this is a very, I guess, quite obvious to everybody that the reason why this woman may have been dropped from Boris Johnson's briefing is the fact that she happened to say the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Yeah. Also, it looks like the fact that if you're not in our gang, then we're not going to put up with you. And again, it's an indication of how petulant this Tory government is. And if your face note doesn't fit, then you're out the door quicker than, dare I say, shit through a goose. So
you dare not, Chris. I'm sure you could rephrase that for an early evening audience.
The whole thing just smacks of comic capabilities of this government, and I mean, honestly, I don't know if petulant is an adequate descriptor of this government, because it is really it is beyond anything that you could ever see in a vaudeville, musical comedy production. You've got every elements of it. You've got Bojo the clown. You've got Cummings playing Harpo the great magician, who can
I've heard him called many things, not that.
30 odd miles, whilst testing his eyesight out. It's absolutely horrendous. It really is. And the one worrying thing about this, Gordon, is the fact that nothing will be done about it. And that is the worrying thing. They can have all these inquiries, they can have all these committee meetings, but at the end of the day, Cummings still gets his way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. What was going to be my next question to Andrew. Andrew, do you think that perhaps it was Dominic Cummings himself who decided to drop this young woman from the briefing?
Well, he's certainly got form in that area, with the former Chancellor's special advisor being removed by the police from Downing Street, I seem to remember. And I'm sure, and certainly the manner in which a number of senior civil servants have either moved jobs or have left the civil service recently since Cummings arrived, it doesn't come. I think it certainly shows signs of being the same MO.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like Down Number 10 is being run like some kind of mafia family organisation, or perhaps, given Cummings' background, you'd probably more accurately call it Bratva, the Russian mafia.
Well, I have heard Mr. Cummings, there's a joke going around apparently in Number 10 that his nickname is now Demonic Cunning.
That maybe overplays his abilities, I don't know, but the manner in which the Downing Street appears to reward family members and junior capos with contracts for PPE that doesn't turn up, for communications consultation. The inner coterie are rewarding themselves. Those who show loyalty remain in the inner coterie with Mr. Cummings, and those who are perceived, whether or not they are actually disloyal, but those who are perceived as being disloyal are excluded or removed, which doesn't really strike me as being a very sensible way of running a government in the middle of a crisis. Is it not more appropriate to get those who are qualified, or those who it's important that the population can put some trust and faith in? Is it not rather more important that they are deployed and are used to communicate and reassure and attempt to reduce the effects of the crisis? Instead, what we're seeing from these events is it's business as usual in a mafia style, with money making going on and scant regard paid to the rest of the population.
Okay, well listen, Andrew, thank you very much. I'm going to end that item on that note just now and move on to our next story. And that is Oxford University's experimental coronavirus vaccine is safe and generated a strong immune response in people who volunteered to help trial it. Researchers have said, raising hopes that it could contribute to ending the pandemic. Professor Sarah Gilbert from Oxford's Jenner Institute said that they were more than happy with the first results, which showed good immunity after a single dose of the vaccine. We're really pleased that it seems to be behaving just as we thought it would do. We've had quite a lot of experience of using this technology to make other vaccines, so we knew what we expected to see. And that's what we have seen, she told The Guardian. The results published in the Lancet Medical Journal are preliminary, with the effect that the vaccine measured by the amount of antibodies and T cells it generates in the blood of the volunteers, not in any response to the virus itself. Large-scale trials have begun in Brazil and South Africa, however, where the infection rates are still high, and it will be possible to assess whether vaccinated individuals are less likely to get COVID-19 than others. The results were a really important milestone on the path to a vaccine, said the study's lead author, Professor Andrew Pollard. They showed that the vaccine was very well tolerated by more than 1,000 volunteers. We're seeing exactly the sort of immune responses we were hoping for, including neutralising antibodies and T-cell responses, which, at least from what we've seen in the animal studies, seem to be those associated with protection. Andrew, let me take your response to this first of all. I'll give Chris a little rest for a moment. This looks very hopeful, certainly, doesn't it? They're getting the sort of results that they hope to see, and now they're going to field trials, it seems, almost immediately, going to Brazil and South Africa, where vaccines are even more desperately needed than here. How long do you think it will take? Are we on course maybe to have a vaccine by the end of the year?
You're probably asking the wrong person, Gordon. My scientific experience, let alone capability, is limited, shall we say?
It is
Very
hopeful,
limited.
shall we say?
However, your point is absolutely right. As we know, drugs companies around the world, supported by governments, are working at breakneck speed to explore and develop possible vaccines. Whilst, as you say, these are the very preliminary results, that this particular approach has not fallen at the first hurdle is on itself is in and of itself encouraging. This vaccine now can move, as you say, can move to the next stages, and notwithstanding that there's progress in Oxford, if that degree of progress is being repeated with other initiatives and by other pharmaceutical businesses and governments around the world, it certainly gives encouragement and hope to the idea that we may see a viable vaccine to this virus sooner rather than later. However, notwithstanding the fact that I'm the last person you would ask on scientific matters, I am aware that making successful vaccines for the whole family of coronaviruses, including COVID-19, but making vaccines for coronaviruses is not a straightforward exercise.
I guess not.
And so it is very encouraging to see this level of progress now, but we're not out of the woods yet.
Okay. Chris, if I could come to you, let me ask you this one, Chris. There's been a lot of rumours and mutterings that somehow or other the big pharmaceutical companies are trying to develop this and to maximise or capitalise on the need for this. And I have heard at least one or two of the WHO saying that there should be an effort made for completely open testing of such vaccines and sharing of scientific knowledge. How important do you think it is to developing a global vaccine to have that kind of cooperation?
I think it's absolutely essential because unfortunately we know that COVID-19 is not wholly owned by one country. As a global pandemic, that is in a nutshell, in inverted commas, global pandemic, and globally, all countries, and I include America in this, as well as the individual countries within Europe, and notwithstanding Britain alone. But we should be developing a vaccine, making a vaccine available, and it should not be at the behest of the highest bidder.
So it should not. So, Chris, your view is it should not be a proprietary medicine. Then it should be generally available to all, and it should be copyable by other laboratories.
Of course, it should be, Gordon, because we have to take into account the countries, the underdeveloped countries around the world, which are probably going to be priced out of the market. As soon as this vaccine is made available, I'm talking about countries who are just this decade are coming to the understanding of other outbreaks such as the Ebola, rubella, countless outbreaks, health outbreaks that they cannot afford to mitigate against, quite clearly because their own country's economy can't afford to, they heavily rely on the West to give their money through state aid, in order that these countries can have medical vaccines available. And again, we look at other countries, other states, shall I mention Palestine? The fact that within Palestine at this moment in time, the Israeli state are not as forthcoming with medical aid for the Palestinian people with regards treatment of COVID at this moment in time. And they are using their preferential treatment on Israeli people with regards the access to ventilators as opposed to Palestinian people.
Okay, well, listen, Chris, I think that's a story for another show later on to investigate that more fully. We're going to move on to our next story now, and we're coming back to Scotland for this one. The number of young people claiming out-of-work benefits has now doubled. The SNP's Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary has urged the UK government to do more to support young people after it was reported that the number of 18 to 24-year-olds claiming out-of-work benefits in the UK had doubled in the last 3 months. In the UK, 2.6 million people are currently claiming universal credit or job seekers allowance and are required to seek work. A fifth of those, 514,770 young people, are aged between 18 and 24. Earlier this month, the UK Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, announced a £2 billion kickstart scheme to help young workers. But the SNP said that this would only see young workers shortchanged because the minimum wage is so low and it discriminates based on age. Neil Gray MP has called on Boris Johnson to carry out the following steps to better support young people during the coronavirus crisis. Firstly, to increase the statutory minimum wage in line with the real living wage. To end age discrimination within the national minimum wage, to extend universal credit eligibility to students, and to uplift universal credit allowance for under 25s in line with over 25s. The SNP has also urged the UK government to be ready to reverse their decision to end the furlough scheme early if it causes an increase in redundancies, and to extend it to 2021 instead of stopping it entirely on October the 31st. Andrew, this again is another one of these horrible side effects of the COVID pandemic, and it looks like, again, the youngsters of the country are the ones probably going to suffer the most from this.
I think in some senses that's absolutely correct, Gordon. As we know in the retail sector and the hospitality sector, that it is preponderantly younger people who work in those industries. And over the summer months, where those industries expand and are very busy with festivals and arts events going on as well, so the employment which young people would normally have obtained is simply not there this year, and that's going to be extremely serious for them. For this year and potentially for out years as well. So I am aware that the Westminster government have said that they will do certain things, but certainly what struck me with those announcements was that they sounded extremely parsimonious and not really focused on making a material improvement on the situation and the hardship which young people in these circumstances are going to face. As usual, it feels like Westminster is more focused on handing money to their chums and not to looking after the interests of the population at large. And so the need to do more quickly, I think, is pretty apparent to most people, and it's not a surprise that Neil Gray and others are pushing as hard as they can to seek to persuade the Treasury that they need to put their hands back in their pockets again quickly.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Chris, if I could turn to you for your comments on this. What I was going to ask you here, Chris, is it fair for the UK government to treat young people almost as if they're children, to the point where they're prepared to pay them less for doing the same work as somebody over the age of 25?
Well, of course it's not. And it's funny that you seek to ask me a rhetorical question such as that. I can only augment as to what Andrew had said, that the kids do an immense body of work in very important industries, from tourism to food retail, pubs and restaurants such as, and also as well the entertainment industry has been seriously disadvantaged. And they rely heavily on young people. If you think about the Edinburgh Festival, there's a high amount of young, energetic kids running around Edinburgh city centre, trying to entice you into various shows and various reviews and whatnot, and what have you. Both my sons are involved in the film industry. Both of them work for cinemas. Albeit Scott does it on a part-time basis, and my eldest boy Kieran, he does it as a full-time profession. He's a professional projectionist at the DCA.
Interesting.
Up in And, he is lucky insofar as the DCA have given him a tentative date to return to work, whereas the View Cinema in Aberdeen, there are other cinemas out there, folks. The View Cinema have not indicated as to when they might resume their services, and going forward, and again, the viewers have to be aware that if I could just slightly change the subject, everything with regards terms and conditions, working time directive, that were hard fought within the
of course,
competence of the European
Listen,
Union.
Chris, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there just now, Chris. We're running a little bit low on time, so we're going to move on to our next story this evening. And this time we're travelling to Zimbabwe. A Zimbabwe journalist detained in the latest abduction of government critics. The authorities in Zimbabwe have arrested a prominent journalist known for reporting his country's endemic corruption in the latest in a series of abductions of government critics. Hopewell Chinono was taken from his home in Harare on Monday by 8 state security agents who broke the windows to gain entry and didn't produce any warrant, his lawyer said. Chinono, who's well-known and internationally respected reporter, recently published documents that raised concerns that powerful individuals in Zimbabwe were profiting from multi-million-dollar deals for essential supplies to fight the coronavirus pandemic. The police said that he would be charged with incitement to participate in public violence, an accusation that is thought to be linked to a forthcoming protest against corruption organised by activists and opposition politicians. Chinono is being held at Harare Central Police Station and was notified of the charges 5 hours after his arrest. He will appear in court on Tuesday. An opposition politician who has been organising high-profile anti-corruption protests was also detained. Jacob Ngari Ahume was the leader of a small Transform Zimbabwe party and is also detained at Harare Police Station and faces the same charges. Andrew, let me come to you on this first. Now, I'll have to be brief, I'm afraid, because we are running a little short on time. But it's not often we hear of countries kidnapping people just because they oppose the government of the day, apart from perhaps Russia. I haven't certainly heard a lot about Zimbabwe in the news recently. This is surely a turn for the worse for Zimbabweans.
I think that I completely agree, Gordon. My concern is the arrest, apparently without warrant, of anybody is a problem. But when it's focused on journalists, it's a sure sign that there's a problem, and that either the security services or those who are directing the security services are, if not out of control, they certainly have the priorities wrong. As you say, the death count of journalists in Russia is a matter of record and a matter of horror from all of us who value the purpose behind a free press. I think there have been some controls in China as well, and so
we will be talking about China later, actually.
Of course. And in a sense, of course, we saw also the way in which journalists were treated in Washington and elsewhere during the Black Lives Matter protests,
Indeed.
with journalists apparently being targeted by the security services as they cleared streets and cleared areas. So the job of being a journalist is never an easy one, and it's clear that the threats in some places are continued, and as a result, journalists need our support.
Indeed, thank you for that, Andrew. Chris, your response to this, I know probably what you will say to this, but this corruption seems to be becoming endemic across the world at the moment.
Yeah, and it's quite clearly a common thread within despotic right-wing regimes of government. But the wider context of this story, Gordon, is possibly one of human rights, and I would suggest that their human rights have been exploited, as you described, that they were forced to smash 8 windows in order to gain entry, obviously by force, in order to carry out a warrant that they didn't have. So what you know, I mean, this smacks of what was that wonderful film back in the 70s? I think the Wild Geese. I think it was Richard Burton and Richard Harris and the other less famous James Bond. That they entered Swaziland in order to liberate a general who was caught up in a coup and stuff like that. But it was all directed by London. Suspiciously.
Listen, thank you, Chris. I'm going to have to rush through the rest of our stories because we have fallen a little bit behind this evening. But we're talking of human rights, we are moving now to Hong Kong. And the UK is suspending its extradition treaty with Hong Kong immediately in response to Beijing imposing new legislation in the former British colony, according to the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab. The imposition of this new security legislation has significantly changed key assumptions underpinning our extradition treaty arrangements with Hong Kong, he told Parliament today. The government has decided to suspend the extradition treaty immediately and indefinitely. Now, Andrew, this sounds awfully like another escalation in this never-ending series of escalations between the West and China. Mostly, I have to say, it seems to be between the United States and the UK and China. This one, another little step along the road to confrontation, it seems, yeah?
Absolutely, Gordon. One is very concerned by the apparent escalation of a Trump-encouraged anti-Chinese activity. The concerns with regard to the changes in the security law for the people of Hong Kong are absolutely right, but that they are now being used as a chip or a pawn in a much bigger game is a major concern on a geopolitical scale.
Okay, let me turn to you, Chris. We've heard a lot in the press about alleged British interference in some of the unrest on the streets of Hong Kong. There seems to be an awful lot of ill feeling between the UK and Beijing at the moment. And now we have the people of Hong Kong apparently basically throwing in the sponge now and giving up because they seem to think that Beijing has got the upper hand now.
Well, I think they're 100% correct in their assertion. Because the so-called transition of power from the Hong Kong government, which was a former British enclave, was supposed to last something, I think, in the region of 45, 55 years. And Beijing have sought to radically reduce that timescale, by about 30 years. Such as their will to bring Hong Kong back under Chinese communist control.
Right. Chris, I'm just going to come back to another international story, leaving China for the time being. And we've just heard news today that the Scottish Government has now lifted its quarantine restrictions on people coming back to Scotland from Spain. Now, while I'm on with you, Chris, is there a specific reason? Because I know that you have a specific interest in airports as part of your work. Is there a reason why the Scottish Government is taking this action now?
It is welcome news, very welcome news, hopefully for the Scottish aviation industry. I didn't understand fully why they didn't lift the quarantine earlier for the Canary Islands, who are about 2,000 kilometres away from the central mainland of Spain, and my own island, Lanzarote, that I favour, has not had a COVID case in over 3 weeks. So I welcome it. Hopefully, it will mean a return to tourism trade from Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Aberdeen airports to the island of Lanzarote, the other Balearic Islands as well. That will hopefully help the Scottish aviation industry in the short term, and in order to sustain some percentage of jobs.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. I was going to ask you, Andrew, the significance of this is obviously not lost on Chris working in the industry. How does it seem from the point of view of holidaymakers at the moment? I'm not hearing a great deal from ABTA and all these various international travel organisations about how they feel about this. Have we heard anything at all about that?
Well, it's interesting, Gordon. I think there was a little bit of reaction when the Scottish Government implemented the restrictions in a way that was different from the Westminster Government. But that objection to me lasted only a couple of days, and I think people accept, and this is a topic we've touched on before, people accept that the advice and the guidance and the restrictions that are being put in place by the Scottish Government are being done clearly and transparently on the basis of the scientific evidence. At the time, it was explained that the R rate in Spain was 10 times the R rate in Scotland, and on that basis, it would be inappropriate to be lifting the quarantine restrictions yet. Certainly, I've spoken to somebody who's just returned from one of the Balearic Islands, and he was saying that the populations there, the local populations there, are treating the crisis very seriously. The wearing of masks is more or less unanimous, and the reaction in the event when outbreaks occur. I think there was a recent very small outbreak on Minorca. The reaction from the population and the authorities is very swift. So it feels like the gap that there was for a few weeks until the R rate in Spain came down has now elapsed, and that the Scottish Government are continuing to pay very close attention and react accordingly.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to come to our final story this evening, and this is a bit of good news for everyone for a change, and that is the Scottish Government is given the green light for drive-in events. Scotland's live event sector will be given the green light to hold drive-in entertainment from Wednesday, the 22nd of July. Live concerts, comedy nights, theatre productions and local bingo events are among the experiences organisers have been reimagining right across Scotland. The decision follows public health advice and that considers the transmission risk associated with drive-in events where the audience remains in their parked cars is sufficiently low to allow them to take place. Appropriate guidance and mitigations must be followed. Other live outdoor events are not due to commence before July the 31st. Drive-in cinemas were permitted to resume screenings following associated safety guidance last week. Now, Chris, I know you have young adult children, and I'm pretty sure they have missed their outdoor concerts and things like that. I'm sure that this must be welcomed by hundreds of thousands of young people and concert goers and comedy night aficionados across the whole of Scotland.
Well, yeah, my kids would love to take part in events such as that. Unfortunately, neither of the two of them can drive.
Speak to me after the show, Chris.
So exactly, Gordon. Yeah, but it's anything that will uh, uh, keep the economy buoyant at this moment in time. Maybe buoyant isn't the best word to use, but keeping it floating, shall we say, has to be explored. And I was conjuring up a picture in my head of when you were talking about drive-in movies that reminded me of the Flintstones from years ago. With Dino in the back of the car and stuff like that, with his head sticking out the roof. But again, if we can see a return to events that encourage a certain amount of socialisation, because an awful lot of people. I went to the pub the other day there, just in search of a pint of Guinness, and I couldn't help but notice the detachment from other human beings and stuff like that, which is obviously, it could play on a lot of people's mental health. And the sooner that we get back to some sort of semblance of normality, then obviously anything that would help that along is to be welcomed.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Andrew, I'm going to give you the last word on this tonight. How important is this socialising to human beings? Is it as vital as Chris thinks it is?
Oh, I think it is, Gordon. Definitely, the shared experiences in public houses, for example, have always been a significant part in people's lives. Like Chris, I'm concerned that these events will exclude those who either can't afford a car or can't drive. But as a small step in the right direction, I certainly was aware that, for example, our friends Greg and Pat Kane and Hugh and Crime are planning an outdoor drive-in concert at Ingliston in August, and I'm pleased that this suggests that their plans will go ahead. So it's a small step in the right direction, and with the punishment that the entertainment industry has had during the COVID crisis, any small crumb of comfort will be welcomed by them. And certainly those who enjoy events like this, it'll be important for them too. So this is a positive step all around.
Okay. Personally, on a personal note, the one thing I've missed more than anything else is being able to go to the comedy club and actually have a good laugh once in a while. But I dare say that will come about eventually as well. We're coming into the final few seconds of this programme this evening, but just a closing comment from both of you, if you would, on, I think, the importance of live events, the importance of the arts to Scotland. Chris, if you want to go first, how important are the arts to Scotland now, and how important is it going to be in the future for the recovery of the country?
Well, I mean, Scotland has got a world-renowned, what's the word, tag on the arts, and it's recognised from America right the way through to Japan, and throughout Europe as well. People flock to Edinburgh, obviously, for our festivals, the Fringe Festival, and the individual cities as well. Glasgow, Aberdeen, Inverness, and all the rest of it have their own international festivals, from small festivals that are celebrating Scottish culture right through to Scottish foodstuffs, Scottish produce, and so it is anything that can be seen to prop up this industry has got to be welcome. And I mean, I would even suggest that Andrew will remember this. Many of the all under one banner marches last year, we seen Japanese tourists lining the streets and stopping and putting us on social media and spreading it throughout the world on social media. It's anything to support that economy has got to be welcomed.
Okay, listen, thank you, Chris. Andrew, regrettably, we're out of time this evening. I'm sorry I can't include another comment from you. We've run out of time. As usual, at this time in the programme, it's my duty to ask you if you want to become a supporter of Broadcasting Scotland, and if you'd like to see more programmes being made by us in future, you can do that by following the instructions on your screen now. Go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register and help us make more programmes. That's it from Scotland at 7 this evening. I'll be back again on what day? On Thursday, beg your pardon, forgot what day it is today. But in the meantime, from the three of us here this evening, a very good night to you.